I was born September 14, 1936. I attended Council Elementary School, Emerson Elementary School, and Junior High School, and I enrolled at Central High School in 1951. At Central High School, I played all of the sports, and when I graduated, I was the most athletic in the class, and I was co-captain of the football team, captain of the basketball, track, and softball team. We didn't play baseball, varsity baseball in high school when I attended Central. I left Central in 1954, 55, and enrolled at Tuskegee, where I spent 4 years and graduated from Tuskegee. And in 1959, my first job and the highlight of my coaching career was at Mobile County Training School. The baseball position wasn't open, but I asked for it. I volunteered to coach baseball, and not knowing at the time I had two future major leaguers that God blessed me with, and they would become world champion baseball players at the time. In fact, I didn't receive a stipend for coaching baseball. Another coach received it, but I was blessed with outstanding talent, pride. Of course, I knew about the pride because I had lost 4 straight football games at Mobile County Training School when I was in high school. So I knew about that. And the community was a classic. They would come together, and at football practice, we had adults attending. It was more adults attending practice and watching and observing the game than teenagers would be. And they followed Mobile County Training School wherever we played. At that time, Mobile County Training School and the other school had switched from Carver Park to Harvard Field, and we played down there. So we had an outstanding athletic program. Again, I knew about the program through my defeat in high school, but I understood why it was so great. Traditionally, Mobile, when the go back to slavery, sell out there in Plateau. So the pride that they had to survive and that they took in the school, in the community, was part, I believe, now nobody told me this and I haven't read this, but I believe that was part of the pride that I never witnessed, the pride that those kids had and the love and respect for authority and athletics. I didn't know at the time that I would have 2 major leaguers on my baseball team. And they were Cleon Jones and Tommy Agee that were world champions with the New York Mets. But all of our programs were great. Everybody helped the others, and we had a family more than anything else. And when one team lost, we all lost. When one team won, we all took pride in that. We won together. So we never had any enviness or any negative feeling towards each other. We were truly one for all and all for one. Again, Cleon Jones and Tom Agee was on that team, and we just had outstanding athletes year in and year out.
Coach, let me just ask you in terms of that first team that you had with Cleon and Tommy Agee, who were some of the other players on that team that you can recall?
Oh, we had Flynn was on that team, Hope, which I was fortunate. We had James Hope, and I playing second base. And we had his brother before then. We had Benny Crenshaw on third base, which was an outstanding third baseman and a long ball hitter. In fact, everybody on that team could hit and was excellent baseball players. We had Big Bolden that weighed about 300 pounds catching. He was probably the only one that couldn't hit that well, but he made up for it as a defensive player, and nobody was coming in. Still in home plate when Big Bolden was there.
Okay.
And we had Penn. We had two. One was small, dynamite, and the other one was a heavyweight.
Yeah.
And we just had players on that team. Shortstop, we had Stevens. Lonzy Stevens was part of that group, and we had I can't think of my little center fielder. He probably was the only one that couldn't hit too well, but he made up for making acrobatic catches in center field. Nothing could get by him. And that whole group was part of my life, and I never will forget them.
Yeah, Coach, you coached baseball the whole time that you were here at County?
I coached baseball the whole time I was here. In fact, I went to service in 61 to 63, and they held my position up, and Coach Chapman, who was my pitching coach, and he volunteered to work with the team also. And then when I came back, I got the job back, and I started coaching again, and it seemed as if I never left. The tradition was still there.
Because we're going to talk a lot more about baseball, but I want to just kind of go back and go back to the community where you grew up at and talk about some of those events and people that helped inspire you to play sports and some of the people you saw in your community playing sports and the way that environment was as well. Because you didn't grow up in the Plateau Magazine community, but you grew up in a different community where there was still a tradition there of great athletes.
Well, I grew up in the area called Diamond Bay. If you live in Mobile, you know that south of Dolphin Street is the area known as Mobile Bay. And of course, the Mobile River is not far from it. So I would imagine that's where it got its nickname, Diamond Bay or Mobile Bay. I grew up in an environment during baseball season where every Sunday you couldn't wait to get out of church and see, and these games were called scrap-up games. Players would come from all over Mobile, and I mean all over, cross town, Trinity Garden, Maysville, Plateau, Happy Hill, all over Mobile. They would gather there and play games. And I tell you, there were some of the greatest games, players that you ever wanted to see. Some who were no doubt in my mind was major league players that could have made, but they were born a little bit early. They came in at the wrong time where blacks wasn't given the opportunity to play in major league play baseball, so they didn't have the opportunity to play. But we had expression back then. We couldn't carry their glove or shoot. They were good. And the killing part, they would come from all over Mobile and gather there and play without incident and all. And they would play from the afternoon until sundown.
Now, you were sharing earlier with me in terms of just talking about that environment in which they played in, where the fans would be around the field. Share a little bit about our conversation regarding that.
The fans, we were certainly blessed by God, because there's no other way to describe it. We would play, we didn't have any stands, bleachers, not a single one. So the spectator would be around the foul line from the catching position all the way down the line. You would have people, hundreds of them, on the sideline, and I mean we had some outstanding shots that was hit, drive down there, and I don't recall a single person being injured. In fact, when I coached baseball at Mobile County Training School, we didn't have any bleachers that stand for people. They stood around the foul line on both sides, and sometimes they would be less than 5 yards from the foul line. And we had some shots down there, and I don't recall anybody ever being injured from a line drive or hard ground. That God was certainly blessing us, because that never happened.
Now, I know you graduated from Central. Share about some of the individuals from Central that you played with, and also share about your transition from high school to college, and the connection of people that were in your life in that prospects.
Well, some of the players that I played with at Central that had an impact on my life, the first one that comes up is Levi Washington. Levi was an outstanding fullback, more blocking, and he was a great runner also. And then we had a player that was nicknamed the Ghost, Charles Freeman, and he was one of the greatest football players that I have ever seen. He was what we used to call fleet-footed. He was very fast, elusive, and could change the direction. But believe it or not, when Central played County at the time in the early stages, the series started in 1947. Central was ahead in the series, and that lasted until I enrolled at Central High. When I enrolled, that was the end of that. My class lost 4 straight games. Mobile County Training School caught up, and then they hadn't looked back since. And he was a great player. Willie McCullough was a great player. Now, we grew up together playing baseball and football, and he was tall then for his age, and they was calling him Stack Mac. And he was out. We thought during the time, we used to praise him for being an outstanding fielder. He was one of the best fielding first base we ever seen. But when he made the major league, they said he was an average fielder and outstanding hitter. He's in the Baseball Hall of Fame as we sit here and talk about it.
Now, did Willie McCullough graduate with you?
He was a year behind me.
Okay.
So he was the most prolific baseball player in my group. And because keep in mind, you had Levi Washington, and he played on some of Grambling great baseball teams and football teams. And believe it or not, his best friend he hooked up with one of County's great athletes, Paul Green. And while they were competitors in high school, they became best friends in college under the great Eddie Robertson. And so we had quite a few. Ralph Taylor was another outstanding player. Dr. Foster. Foster had several doctors and MD, and Warren Foster was a great player. We had so many great players back there. I never thought about how great they were until after I graduated from high school, went to college, and started reading about some of these great athletes, and I realized how great a playing bed Mobile was, and all the areas around Mobile. great players that would have been in the major league if they had the opportunity. But they didn't have the opportunity. So consequently, we don't know about it.
Just go ahead, Larry.
Coach, getting back on the point, you say you started reading about these guys. In terms of the media, where was their reading coming from?
Well, when I say I read about them, when you there's a book about the Negro League, baseball before Jackie Robinson, and baseball after. Before Jackie Robinson played in the Negro League. In fact, that's where he was signed by Branch Rickey from the Negro League. And you had so many great players, and that's been documented and confirmed. After the Major League season was over, the best players in the Major League played against the best black players from the Negro League. And believe it or not, and many people don't know this, and they wouldn't believe it, the Negro League won most of the games. And that was just 1 year. That was every year. After the Major League season, they'll pick the best from the Major League and the best from the Negro League, and we won most of those games. Now that was enlightening to me, and I'll take that to my grave. I didn't realize that because very little is written about it, and it's not in. You can't just go to the library and pick up a book and read and know the history of it. But it makes sense. In baseball, you need agility, speed, quickness, and for some reason, God bless black athletes with these talent and skills that you need to be a good baseball player.
I want to ask you two quick questions, Coach, in terms of number one, when you were in high school, who did you think was one of while you were in high school, the best athlete that you probably saw? Because at that time, there were three schools in the Mobile area.
That's right.
There were Horton, Central, and Mobile County Training School. That's one question I want you to just kind of think about. The second piece that I want you to think about is also your transition from high school and how did you get to college, and just kind of give us a background on that as well.
Well, in high school, the best running back that I thought that was in our area at that time was from, believe it or not, was from Mobile County Training School. His name was David Miller, and it was nicknamed Cat Poop. I never did get the significance of that, but I can tell you, Mobile County Training School was loaded with running back. And I met one out here today. I remember him way back there in the 50s, but didn't recognize him when he was in there, Lindsey Green. He was the other. David Miller was the left halfback, and Green was the right halfback. And that the whole backfield was dynamite. They are some of the had some of the greatest running backs in the history. If integration had come along earlier, no telling how many great players Mobile County Training School would have had Alabama, Auburn, and all of the schools throughout the nation, because they were loaded.
And Coach Horton, I know you had the pleasure of coaching Tommy Agee and Cleon Jones, and being that you're on the subject of great running backs, can you tell a little bit about Cleon Jones and football? Because a lot of people don't know how good he was in football.
Cleon Jones was the greatest all-around player I've ever seen. Now, all of these, David Miller and all of the ones before, was great football players. In fact, David Miller was one of the greatest sprinters, tracksters. But I didn't see him play basketball, so or baseball. So I think he was a two-sport athlete. He was a great football player and he was a great trackster. But I never heard anybody, nor did I see him play basketball. And Cleon wasn't necessarily the best running back or the best receiver or punt returner. He was the best all-around player. He could do it all. I never seen a player that was great going from football to basketball to baseball and at the same time ran track. And that took a lot of doing because you couldn't devote. In fact, on my baseball team, since the head coach and athletic director was the track coach, he went to track practice first. But that was all right. That was all right. We just waited until track practice was over, and it didn't last. And then he'd come over to the baseball, and we didn't have any problems. But he was great.
Okay.
And that's how great County was at that time.
Okay. Well, just get back to the other piece. Get back that I know that at the time the time now is a lot different than when you grew up in terms of going on from high school to college. And many individuals had to go transition, either go to the military or because they didn't have a whole lot of money in their pockets to be able to go to school. So
that's an understatement. We didn't have any money. We didn't have zero.
So just tell me a little bit about that in terms of your great athletic ability in high school. I know that you were a great student. So what transpired from you leaving high school to getting to college, and how did you go about doing that?
Well, one of my best friends at that time, Levi Washington, who was a great coach and had a great record of state championship in football in Mobile, was a member of Grambling team. And one of the pioneer coaches of Tuskegee, Cleve Abbott, died during my senior season. And Levi was at Grambling, and my coach in college, Van Cleve, was a member of the coaching staff down at Grambling. And he asked Levi, was there anybody in Mobile as fast as he was, as good as he was? He said, yeah. My good friend, Curtis Horton. So then I started receiving letters from Tuskegee. And one of the teachers at Central was Gene Lowe, which was a classmate of his at Tuskegee during his day at Tuskegee. And he wrote her a letter saying, get behind me, and sent in my transcript and record. And they were surprised to know that I was in the National Honor Society and was on the honor roll and everything. So I applied for a scholarship, not a scholarship, but for, academic. And they did give me academic tuition, what they call. But you had another problem. You had the boat room and board. So at Tuskegee, we had little jobs that they give, taking care of the gym, clean maintenance on the track, doing little chores and around and working. And so that's how we got the other. So now once you were there and made a name for yourself in school, then you didn't have to worry about tuition, room and board, or anything. In fact, they give you a little job working around where you made a little money. But that's how I got there.
Well, tell us a little bit about your successes at Tuskegee and some of the players you may have played with and played against at Tuskegee as well.
Well, at Tuskegee, we had a rich tradition in football. In fact, I don't know whether y'all know that, Tuskegee is the winningest black predominant football school in America. We won more games, so it was 600 and something a few years back, it might be pretty close to 700. Now, I didn't know that at the time. So at Tuskegee, we had a tackle, Robert Dabney. He was my roommate, and we became best friends. He was an outstanding offensive tackle. He came from Turner High in Atlanta, and we had average team, good season, but not great. But we played Alabama State every Thanksgiving, and to my amazement, I did not know that the Turkey Day classes we had in Mobile, Alabama, originated from the Alabama State Tuskegee Turkey Day class. In fact, I was in Mobile was the Turkey Day class, but I never knew, nobody ever told me where it originated, where it came from. And I was playing in the Turkey Day class at Tuskegee against Alabama State. That's where Mobile Turkey Day Classic came from.
Getting back to high school just a little bit, where were some of the stadiums that you played ball in high school at?
We played all of our games except one at Carver Park, and it still exists. As you, the stands are still there. You never notice it. Y'all probably have gone out there, and the stands. You could sit on one side, and those stands are still, still there, and you stood up, and from that point on, you stood up on the other side. But believe it or not, the side that the high school athletes went to when they wasn't playing, watching the other two teams, high school, Horton and County play, was over there on the side where you would stand up, and you could understand that. Because you could clown and carry on, enjoy yourself from that side. And we had more fun doing that than we did when we were able to go to Harvard Field and sit down and go to Ladd Stadium because you couldn't roam. You had to stay in place and sit, but we had a lot of fun. Then there was also a gathering place for county athlete, Horton Mary athlete. When one school wasn't, the other two would be there to watch and observe the other, and that's when you met some of those guys. It was really great.
When you were in high school, did you ever think about at that time wanting to play against the white high schools in Mobile?
Yes, I did. I think that was everybody's dream, was to see, because we didn't know the standard. We didn't know how good. And in a sense, we were raised a little inferior. And it's not because we felt that way and wanted to be that way. It's because I was raised in segregation. You brought up a very good point. Everything, when I rode the buses, there was only one bus that you could sit in the front, and that was a Cedar Davis bus. And the only reason why you could sit on the front and up there is because it started in a black neighborhood and it ended in a black neighborhood. It started down at Council on Virginia Street. Council still exists. That school is a magnet school now. That's where it started on that end, and it ended up on Lexington Avenue off of Davis Avenue. So but in between that, you went through white neighborhood, but that was predominantly black from end to end. So I was raised in segregation, so we never knew. But at different parks, we practiced a lot at Crawford Park. That was one of the best parks for whites. They had a baseball stadium on one end with red clay and all, looked like a major league infield. We were on the other end, grass around all the way. So sometime we would play. They'd come down on our end, and we would play football, baseball, and we would win some, and we would lose some.
Okay.
But that was the only integration we had playing against white.
And was those sort of pickup integrated?
Those would pick up integrated team. But if I guess if the white community had known that this was going on, I believe they would have stopped it. But we had a good relationship between. It's amazing how athletes will play against each other, and race is not an issue. It's only after you leave the baseball field during those days that you run into the issue, segregation.
Let's talk a little bit about the semi-pro teams, or as you call them, semi-pro teams during the times of the 50s and 60s, and particularly that you were around and played with, and some of the guys that you came across and know.
Well, during that time, when I was in high school, if you were a good player, the team would sort of ask you to come out and try out for the team. We had quite a few semi-pro, what we call semi-pro, because they traveled every Sunday, normally outside of Mobile, down the Gulf Coast. You can start it with Moss Point, where they had teams, Pascagoula, Biloxi, all the way down the Gulf Coast. Then in Mississippi, you had Laura, Mississippi, Hattiesburg, and these were the teams. And in Mobile, you had the magazine Black Bear. You had the Mobile Black Shippers and the Mobile Black Bears. You had several teams, and you had some great players on it. And some of the guys, Randall was a great player. You had so many. We didn't know how good. I didn't realize how good the black players were until integration came, and then you could see them compete against the best in the world, and then you realize how great these guys were back then. And sometime at the semi-pro, you might have made $1. Sometimes you didn't make anything, and sometimes was a big payday was $10, $12, $15. That was like $100 back then, and there were some great players down the coast. I mean, some great teams. You didn't have to leave the Gulf Coast running the players, but for some reason up there in Jackson, Alabama, Thomasville, this was the circuit. You went through these little areas. They had teams, and I don't know what kind of contract they had, and how did they get in contact with each other to know, how did that, whether it's by phone, because I know most of us didn't have a telephone, but for some reason they knew the schedule. I guess it had to be by phone.
Coach, did you play with these teams while you were in college or after they got out?
I played with them while I was in college, and 1 or 2 years after I had gotten out, we played even out here. We had one of the great teams, Fat. I think I have his name, Robinson. He had some of the best players in this Mobile area, the magazine Black Bear. And I mean, they were good. And I used to wonder, how in the world could a man as big as he was manage a base? Well, he was a unique person. He managed sitting down. But he knew his baseball. He directed the team and probably had coaches under him, hitting fungos and all. I wondered about that. How can a man that weighed 300 pounds or more coach? He coached sitting down. And I wish we had a record of it and that we recorded it to see how that was done. That would have made the top 10 list. But he was well loved, respected, and had great teams. They came from everywhere. play for it.
Now, Coach, you had an opportunity to coach at County, and you had an opportunity your last couple of years here to go undefeated in baseball. And talk a little bit about those teams, and then talk about your transition when you left those teams and went to, I think after that you went to McGill in terms of that.
Yeah.
And the second point I want to make is that when I know integration fully hit in 1970, how many other head sports coaches from predominantly black schools went to a predominantly white school to coach?
Was very few. It was very few. In fact, we didn't know where we were going. No one ever told us. We didn't know. I found out later I probably would have been at Viger, but McGill Tulin knocked at my door and asked me to coach, and I didn't apply over that. There was another black coach that was over there named Henry Williams that opened the door over there at McGill, and when Mobile County Training School was reduced to a middle school, and Semipro was just taken off the map completely, we didn't know where we would be. But most of the teachers from county went to Viger, and I heard through the grapevine that I probably would have been at Viger also. But I had a wife and a family, so I took the first train. And when McGill came to my home and offered me a job over there, and there was something else. I was the first black varsity coach in McGill history, and when I say that, I was over the baseball team. We had made an outstanding record out here. Cleon and AG was world champion, and people that didn't know about Mobile County Training School before then, they knew about them after because of the World Series and everything that they had done. But so that's how I got to McGill, and that was an integrated situation. That team was mostly white. It was I had one or two black, and they couldn't play really. They weren't, I would have cut them if they were in their county, but I kept them on the team. I kept them. They were dedicated, sitting on the bench every week. So then I noticed the biggest difference that I noticed between baseball players at county and the baseball players at McGill, we were hands and shoulders over them in speed. Most of my players at McGill was slow. When I say slow, I'm just comparing to Mobile County and what I'm used to. Speed, used to it. Didn't have to buy it to teach it. It came. But over there, you had to learn to go from base to base, and a strategy that was different. And we could steal on first pitches. We didn't have to wait for the count or anything. And I became a better baseball coach over there because I didn't have all. Then I realized how much talent we had at county. And like I said, it was slow. I coached Eddie Stanky's son. He was an outstanding fielder and everything, but again, slow. I don't think I had one player over there that could outrun any player I had. So speed was it right off different. But I tell you one thing they had that was superior to us, in my opinion. And I don't want to admit this, but it's the truth. The catching skills were better. That's the only position that mechanics that they had and it could have been fielding, blocking
Right.
pitches and what have you, and even throwing out runners home to me. Now, somebody else might differ with that, but that's the
But
only
you're talking about an overall basis.
overall basis. Blacks, we were superior to them.
Well, let me just ask you this on that same line, Coach. In terms of clinics, coaching clinics, and player clinics, did you find that McGill and some of the predominantly white schools had advantages over us? Because I think the clinic that we had was in the neighborhood.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well,
Did they have clinics?
yes, they did. And good question. Good. I never heard of a baseball clinic until I, became a teaching coach at McGill. They brought it to me that they would send me to if I was interested in going to a clinic, and so I went to clinic, and they had former major league coaches and managers and all playing and technique, or it might be base running, batting, and all these various, that's right, phases of baseball you could go, pitching and what have you. And it was different. It was definitely an advantage for them over us. But we had an advantage too, because on Sunday afternoon you could see some of the greatest mobile players play, strap up,
Right.
playing. And I actually saw players, especially catchers, catch without a breast protector, chin guard. I don't know to this day how they did it. And God bless them. Because in the major league, they got the best equipment, breast protectors, chin guard, they got the best and have it. And these guys didn't have nothing but a mitt and a mask. And they didn't even think about it. Didn't even think about it. But I give them credit. They had more courage than me, because you couldn't have paid me back in the day when I was watching to get behind the plate with no protection. I mean, no chin guard, no breast protection, and I never saw one get hurt or injured by a pitch. Never. Foul chips coming off. They didn't just start coming off the day they've been coming off since the beginning of baseball. Never seen one. They had a face mask and a mitt, and that was it.
And Coach, before we leave this subject, can you tell us the specific years that you coached at McGill too, and kind of explain to us how well received you were as far as being the first black coach at McGill too, and to some of the athletes and coaches?
Okay, now let me go back. When I say the first coach, I meant over varsity.
Oh, varsity.
Because Henry Williams was over there. He was an assistant football coach, which was the first black over there to coach. But he was an assistant. There wasn't any head. When I say head coach, I mean over the varsity sport. There wasn't any. And because of, and I believe to this day, the only reason why I was the first one was because of Cleon Jones and Tom Agee. And everybody knew about them. Two Mobilians was world champion. Everybody knew about it. So that was the reason why I think they knocked on my door. There's no other reason. And offered me that job.
So how were you treated there, Coach, in terms of, did you come across any kind of uncomfortableness or?
Only one or two of the players, I guess it was difficult for them to be under a black man, but they gave me respect and all. I don't think that would have happened at a public school. Keep in mind now, McGill is a private Catholic school that in its in itself tell you that it's a church religious oriented school. I don't believe I would have been as welcome at another predominantly white school as I was at McGill. If there was any dissension or I didn't know about it. They treated me fine, well, but believe it or not, now I had a conference with Pete Banks, who was the athletic director. My first conference, and he explained to me about the do's and don'ts. And one of the don'ts was involving white students, female white students. But he didn't have to worry about that. He really didn't. He really didn't.
What were the years that this took place, Coach?
It took place in 1970 to 74. That's when county was reduced to 69. And I started, that was my first job after that. If I had stayed, I believe now, I would have been advised. But since I didn't know, we didn't have any information, I mean none, where we were going. And to this day, I don't understand why. Maybe they didn't know. Maybe the administration over here didn't know. I don't know. But we did not know where we were going. We were lost. We had responsibilities, bills, and all. And when a top flight school, academic school and all, like McGill knocked on my door, I took the first train.
I have a question about that. Going back to when they decided to make county a low school and just do away with Central, were the instructors over at county or Central, were they involved in the process, or was there a process that you can recall?
If there was a process, I wasn't aware of it. I'm not saying it wasn't. It wasn't.
But
I'm
you
just saying
weren't involved in it.
Teachers we didn't know a thing. We just knew it was coming. But now, as I think about it, we had heard rumors several years before, but at the end of the year and the incoming year, nothing happened. So we didn't believe that would come.
Coach, I don't know if you noticed or not, but in 1968, there was a ruling by the federal courts against Alabama and Mobile particularly about the way in which they distributed funding for athletics. And that seemed to have been, and at the time, of course, I was in high school not knowing that, but that tended to be a triggering device to say that, get your act together or we're going to start cutting off federal funding. Were you aware of that?
No, I wasn't aware of that. I wasn't aware. In fact, I was angry about that. Why did Murphy have the best of everything? Best of everything. And the predominantly black school didn't. They were first class with equipment, facilities, everything. And we were second, but then I found out this is what they told me now. That Murphy and these other schools raised money, and some of the alumni and what have you give them so much and so on. So the have was continually having the best facilities, the best of everything, and the have-nots were continually not having this. Now you can take that with a grain of salt. You can take that with a grain, and of course you got to admit that Murphy is the number one school academically in the eyes of the predominantly white population. That's the number one. Regardless of Davidson, regardless of Theodore, you can just name them. Shaw, when it was in existence, still. And this can be verified by that recent tornado damage to Murphy. And I don't believe it would have been a black school in Mobile County that was damaged by the tornado, and in a year's time, it not only it's been reconstructed and done, but it's probably better. And of course, I've only seen it. I haven't gone over there. I wasn't interested enough to see it, but I saw it on TV and walkways and everything they have. And I realized too, when I was working part-time in the Mobile Recreation Center in track and field, that Murphy, as big as it was and thought of, didn't have a regulated track. And that stumped me. I wondered about that. And a regulated track now is 400 meters. And guess what I found out? I found out in checking, they had engineers, all kinds, coming in. They just didn't have the room from the building to the back street to put it in. So that track, instead of being 400 meters, it's something like maybe 340, some 360, but it's not 400. And that's why they can't have a certified track meet there, because they don't have a track. But that's why. But it's not because of lack of effort. They had all the engineers in the world, and they put it on the drawing board, and I don't care how they tried, what angle they used, they just didn't have room from the end of that gym onto the next street. Now, they could possibly could have done it by buying up the property and extending Murphy for another block or so. But it was interesting to me. That was one of the most interesting things. How come a school like Murphy don't have a standardized track? And not because of effort, lack of money or funds. They just couldn't
do it.
The best engineers in Mobile.
There's two questions, Coach. I'd like to ask you. One is on sports, and then one is about something that you were a part of, and I was a part of, and Larry was a part of. The first one is, as you think about head coaches, and you have to put them in some category, both as a player and as a coach in Mobile, where would you rank Charles Rose and others in that venue?
Well, I might be prejudiced, so I might not give a good, valid answer, but I'll rank him number one. He was, in my opinion, and that's what you're asking for. He was the most organized, outstanding football coach that I have ever had the opportunity to work on his staff, being around him and all. And he was head and shoulders above all the other coaches that I've worked with and been around and associated with. He was head and shoulders. He was a well-organized, highly intelligent man. There's not too many coaches that can teach government and all of the subjects that he taught, and still have the time to be an outstanding coach. In fact, that's another good point. When I went over to McGill, I found out that the head coach over there, they don't have classes. Another thing, they sit in the office, football, from the time from morning to evening. They don't teach it. At county and the other schools, at all the predominantly black schools, a head coach there had to be a head coach, instructor on duty in the morning, and then the only thing that would prevent him from being on duty in the afternoon is football practice and basketball practice. Otherwise, we had to do it all, and still was expected to produce and do top-notch coaching when we had all that responsibility during the day. Supervision is the word I wanted to use. Supervision, teaching classes, and I'm not talking about physical education, government, chemistry, and all of these type of. We had to do all of that. We were more than coaches. In fact, they used to tell us, the administration, you are a teacher first and a coach second. But in a predominantly white school, you are a coach first and a teacher second. You don't worry about no because he doesn't have any academic school. And while you got, a black coach has to worry about lesson plan, supervision duty, and everything, or fundraisers and all. He's just sitting in that office all day. And then going to clinic. What is a clinic? What is a clinic? Never heard of it. And they're sending you down to Florida and different places to a baseball clinic. I don't know whether they sent me down to their clinic because they thought I needed it or whether they were doing. I don't know. I wondered about this all the time. But I can tell you this, when Mobile County Training School, we played a few predominantly white schools. We held our own and we won most of the games against them. And played some of them right here on this campus. We held our own.
Coach, I just want to ask you a question because you were intimately involved in this. I think it was probably the first integration process. Larry may not have been involved, may not be aware of it, but my junior year and Larry's senior year, 1966-67, we had our first prom at a hotel, and you were part of that piece because I remember Fred Brown and I going down to the hotel and negotiating with you to talk about that particular thing. Do you remember the transpiring of that situation in terms of us having that first prom at the Battle House?
That was historical in itself, because the Battle House, even to this day, is the monumental elite hotel in the city with a historical background that goes back to the Confederate War. So it still was the best in Mobile and one of the best in the state. I don't know. This was a time at the beginning of integration on small.
It was a time of integration, and I remember a group of you there, and I can't remember how it transpired.
I was a member of the Strackers.
That's where it was
club,
right? And
the Strackers at that time, the original Strackers, was this is the word I want to use here. Was opening the doors for integration at various hotels, motels, balls. We were the first one to have a ball at the Bell House, to have any functions at Museum. You just name it, all the way down. And it was one down to Mount Louis Island, down there, and we were the first one in there. I guess Martin Luther King had opened the door of civil rights, and he took full advantage of that and going to these places. And it took a lot of courage to do that, because when you raised in segregation, going to the back of the bus, you would be, say at Crest, Woolworth downtown, the big department store during that day, but during that day. You would be in line to be waited on. You have your merchandise, and when you get to the front, a white person could come around and
in front of it.
and there's nothing you could do but grit your teeth and take it and take it. Or you could have fought, but you didn't in jail, got a record and all. That's what segregation. That's the benefit we have of integration. Many say to this day, we just got token. They would have to be in segregation to understand we got more than token. When you couldn't sit on the front of the bus, when you went to the Singer Theater, the best theater in Mobile, had to pay the same amount and go at the back and usher upstairs to a section. We come a long way.
Oh, yeah.
We come a long way. And God bless me to see both sides, because my grandchildren and my children haven't seen the other side. And they think it's bad now. What about them? And think about it, paying the same price. In fact, we had a little area up in the Singer Theater where you could pay a little bit more and get a better seat. Then it was tough. But that was part of you were raised, born into the system, so you survived.
Because we've talked about a lot today, and we could probably talk for another 2 years and not cover everything, but I wanted to close out here by asking you if there's anything that you would like to share at this particular time, that if you don't really say it, it won't probably get said.
Well, I don't know if I had that, but I can say this. The highlight of mine, I'm not talking because I'm sitting here, I'm talking from my heart. The highlight of my coaching career is Mobile County Training School. Now I understood the first month why I lost four games to Mobile County Training School. I had never seen pride, community pride, devotion to a school like they had. There's an old proverb in the African community. It takes a village to raise a child, and I believe in my heart this is what kindness is all about. It didn't matter. At Central, you might have had confrontation if you were from down the bay and somebody was from Orange Grove or even Pritchard. We had some students from Pritchard commute all the way down to Central. And the Central I'm talking about is where Dunbar is now. That's the Central I graduated. And then you have all of the love and respect. If somebody beat you out of position, I've never seen a kid say a word, or they get in a group and going to try to protect, or I'm going to look out for shields, I'm going to look out for flint. When you hit that field, it was one for all and all for one. And as far as athletic, you had to prove yourself. Once you prove yourself, you were accepted. You were accepted anyway. The only thing, if you didn't prove yourself, you would be on the bench. It's simply the best one played. And that seemed to have been one of the criteria that we had at county. It wasn't who you knew. It wasn't what your father, your mother had. If you could outrun somebody on the track team, you would have started. On the baseball team, when we had a tryout or whatever, the best man won. If we had two great players, it was easy to get one up, move him to another position. Well, you had both of those on playing at the same time. But I never seen that before. Magazine, and I didn't know the difference between. I didn't know Baby's Road separate, but you didn't have to be out there but a week or two to know where the separation was. And athletically, we were a family. We loved each other, gotta respect each other, and all the coaches worked together. You left from one. The only one that wasn't involved with everything was Charles Rose. He had football and track. I don't recall Charles ever being involved with basketball on any level. Yeah, but it was the love and the respect and the togetherness. I remember then I understood it. Now I know why we lost. We didn't have that. We had good rapport and everything, but not close knit, family knit, and all. I don't care what family background. You better be able to play. If you didn't have the skill, you wouldn't play. And a kid better not come up to you and ask you why. I never run into that until I integrate. Why I'm not playing, coach? When I went to McGill, that's the first time in my life I heard, what? What? Because I play the best. I don't care if your dad is a member of the cabinet, county commissioner, whatever. I play the best. And believe it or not, they will ask you. A black kid never asked, why I'm not starting at third base instead of express. Never heard that till I got in Whiteville. But I had an answer for it because I would have quit as coach before I had to cater to parents. Won't ever be because they contribute so much X number of dollars to it. But that exists. That exists. Why my son ain't playing? He ain't playing because he's the third string catcher. I have he's the third string third base. I have better players in front of him.
And we got one last question for you, Coach Horton, because you brought up a very interesting point a couple minutes ago about Dr. Martin Luther King, and being that coming up is going to be the 50th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. Just explain the significance of sports as it relates to integration and how you see sports impacted that integration movement.
Well, it did. We did better in integrating sports than school, colleges, or than other facets of it. In fact, during the time that you were running back, we tried to get in contact with Bear Bryant to tell him about Cleon Jones and these other players, great players we had. An athlete is an athlete. I don't care what color he is, where he comes from. If he can play and had talent, he can play. And somebody either called and he said that he'd get back with us at that time. And in fact, we had Cleon Jones at that time. And he was the one we thought would be the one with the talent. Now, academically, I don't know. But then again, at those big universities, you don't have to be the top academic person to make it. They got tutors, classes, they got everything to help you make it. They can go over you with fine points because they pay instructors, teach you, and all. So think about it. We don't seem to be losing anybody up there. We don't seem to be losing. Everybody who go seem to make 4 years of eligibility anyway. If they don't get a degree, they seem to make the 4 years everywhere and doing well. So how do they do? And so yeah, that impacted a lot of things that we had to go. But when you've been through segregation, the integration is a catwalk. Black, we don't have a problem the other races have a problem. Because they're not used to being around and being the last one to receive, and poor economic conditions, not the funds or the money to have the best, read the best, and think, we don't have a problem. We've been through it. It's a catwalk for us. But they have a problem. They have to give up things.
So, Coach, what you're saying is that sports
Open the
sports
door.
open the doors, and sports made integration more tolerable.
More tolerant. And then I tell you something else about sports. Sports is in a league where the supporters, the graduates, the alumni and all, they don't care about who's playing and who's scoring. All they want at Alabama, Auburn, the SEC
So,
is the result, the win. And when they can see that minorities are making Alabama the best, can't get away from it, the best. I saw an article last week in the paper, and Alabama had about 8 running backs in the paper, in the Mobile Press. 8 running backs on that picture. And guess what color all of them were? Black. Where's the white? Where's the white? They don't care about publicity this now, because they picked number one. Number one. They want to win. It's all about winning. And I don't know how those athletes are treated off the field, but I know on the field they treated royally.
right.
Yeah.
Well, Coach, we can go on for weeks on this.
Oh, Lord.
But we're gonna close out on that.